Well, hello, folks. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Livestock Guardian webinar series. I got a few things for you guys before we get started. I do want to thank the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for funding my position and making this program possible. Dr. Redden, our center director, and then, as always, Robert Pritz, our Zoom guru. So thank you guys for all your support. Our sponsor for this time is going to be Lone Star Tracking. If you have any questions about GPS trackers or like to purchase a GPS tracker system, go ahead and contact Lone Star Tracking and ask for Thomas or Mark over there. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat room, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar today. So I'm going to be your presenter today, and I have been working here at the AgriLife Center since 2019, and I've had livestock guardian dogs of my own for about 9 years. And so we're going to talk to you guys today about GPS tracker technology and how that can aid in your management of your livestock guardian dogs. So there's lots of different types of GPS trackers that are out there. The ones that we use here at the center are basically industrial type or commercial GPS trackers. The ones that you can buy for like pets, while they work well if you have a pet, if you have a livestock guardian dog that isn't well socialized or is just a little difficult to catch at times, having one of these industrial type trackers makes it a lot easier. The battery life is much better than any of your pet trackers that are out there. Oops. And also one of the nice things on these units, hopefully you can see my cursor, but the type of tracker that's over here in the corner, all these industrial trackers have a rubber gasket of some sort around them. And so if your guard dog gets into the water trough at some point or into the creek or pond or something, these units won't short out on you. So that's what makes these really nice. And they also have a very strong plastic case to them, so they don't damage as easy. So how do GPS trackers work? Well, basically there's 4 different systems used worldwide. The US system is the global positioning system, and we have 28 different satellites that are orbiting outside the Earth. And then there's 5 relay stations that are positioned around the Earth for the US, and those relay stations make sure that the satellites are working properly and the positions are being transmitted correctly, and they can handle any type of adjustments to the satellites if there's anything like that needed. So how that you get an actual position of where your dog is, or where the tracker is, I guess I should say, it takes a minimum of 3 different satellites to get a position of the tracker. Usually 4 is a more common method of triangulating. That extra one just kind of gives you a little bit more accuracy. Now, for some of the things, these GPS trackers that we use on the dogs are not like anything that the military uses, where it can pinpoint down to, a couple inches or anything like that. When you get into that kind of accuracy for like any type of farming things or, like I said, military applications, they're using multiple satellites. And whenever you get more than 4, the cost for those companies increases quite a bit. And so all your GPS trackers for dogs that we usually use 4 satellites to triangulate those positions. So they're fairly accurate, but not down to the inch. So some important terms, if you're new to GPS trackers and you're looking to get some for your dogs, pings or locations. That's basically the position that the tracker takes, and you can change that, but usually about 15 to 30 minutes for a ping works well. Most trackers can store thousands upon thousands of pings at a time, so you don't really have to worry about it being overwritten and not knowing where your dog is. The pings don't use a whole lot of battery life. What burns up your battery life are your updates or your uploads. And those occur at set times throughout the day. Usually 2 to 4 hours is pretty good. If you have a younger dog, you might want to have it down to 1 hour. But just keep in mind that the uploads are what's going to use all your battery life. And so if you have a dog that's well socialized and you can catch them, then your uploads, can happen more often. The third term that I think is real important is a geofence. And most of your GPS tracking companies that are out there have the ability for you to draw a geofence around your property or your pastures, and you can have multiple geofences set up. So if you've got 100 different pastures, you can draw lines around all 100 of them and get a notification if your dog leaves or even enters a location. So geofences are really helpful, especially for dogs that are roaming or young dogs that wander a little bit. And you can get those notifications either via text message or email. The other thing is most of these companies also have a phone app of some sort. And so some of those phone apps are better than others. And so that's one thing I would encourage you to do is when you're looking for a GPS tracker, check out the software that the company has that you're going to use and make sure that it'll do the things that you need it to do for your ranch location. So types of GPS trackers. Basically, there's two types. There's a passive tracker and an active tracker. And the main difference between the two is that the passive tracking unit, it's just a receiver. It doesn't transmit data at all. So you have to take, excuse me, you have to take that unit off the dog and download that data when you want to know where it's been. So for research purposes, things that we do here, that's not a bad tracking system. Most of our dogs are older dogs. They don't roam very often. And so we can use a tracker like that. For most producers, though, you guys are going to want to have an active tracker of some sort. And so those trackers receive and transmit data back and forth, and they're always taking a location and getting it updated on a regular basis. And so you have that real-time viewing of your data and where your dog is at. And it's being sent either by satellite or cellular service. And we'll talk about those different kinds of trackers here in just a minute. So the main passive tracker that we use is the I Got You. And there's two different versions. There's the GT 120 and then a GT 600. Mainly there's just some differences in the size and how much they cost and the amount of locations that they'll store. But those will store between 65,000 and 262,000 GPS positions before it starts to overwrite those. These units are rechargeable. They're very small. They're only about 1 3/4 inches by 1 3/4 inches in size. They'll do 1 ping per hour, and they last between 20 and 30 days, depending on which one of those units that you have. So the pros and cons to these units. Well, they're obviously very inexpensive. There's no monthly fee to them. There's no connectivity issue. It just is automatically going to take that position every so many minutes. They're rechargeable, so you don't have to worry about batteries. And they're very small, so it's easy to put them on a dog's collar. The main problem for most producers is going to be there's no live view to it. And so you're not going to be able to tell where your dog is at all times. Also, there's a set limit on the data, and the battery life, 20 days or 30 days at the most is pretty short. And even though they say they're weatherproof, they definitely are not waterproof. So if the dogs get these wet, these units will short out. So active trackers, those are the main trackers that we use now. There's several different kinds that we use. There's a cellular tracker, Lora system tracker, which is the newest one that we've been using, and then a satellite-based one. The cellular tracker that we use is the Oyster 2. In the past, we've used a Yabby. We've also used the Optimus ones. And then recently, I tried out one of the Solar Max units. They have a lot of benefits. As long as they're able to get a cell signal, they're going to be able to send the data for you. And so typically what you'll see is like the picture over on the side of the slide. is, that's a bunch of different sheep and some dogs at one of our research ranches, and you can get that data. That's over 1 day's travel for those animals. On the Lora system, it is a battery-operated unit, and you can either use an Oyster Lora, which is the unit that we're using, or there's also a new one that's just coming out right now called the Aide Lora. All those Oyster Yabby units, those are all from a company called Digital Matters, and I'll have a link to them at the end of the slideshow today. If you have an area that you don't have a lot of cell service in, or it's very spotty, you could use one of the satellite-based trackers. And so those send a signal via satellite. There are a couple different ones that are out there. There's the Smart 1C, which is the unit that we've used, or there's also a Smart 1 Solar. The main issue with the solar one is it's fairly large, and so unless you were going to attach that probably on a harness on your guard dog, it's probably really not going to be feasible for most operations. So the Yabby and the Oyster. The Yabbies cost about $100. They have a monthly service fee of around $15. Sometimes you can get them a little bit less if you have multiple units. In our experience with the original Yabby, we were getting about 90 days of battery life, and that was with a 15-minute ping and 8-hour uploads. The new Yabby Edge is supposed to greatly improve battery life. I'm still waiting to see. We just got some of those units this week, and I put one out on a dog. So check back on our Facebook page for more information on the Yabby Edge. We'll let you know if the battery life is as great as the company says it is. But the Yabby uses 3 AAA batteries. I do strongly recommend that you use the Energizer lithium-ion batteries in these units. It really does help extend the battery life quite a bit over just a standard like alkaline battery. The Oyster 2 is the main unit that we're using now. They cost about $150, and again, with about a $15 a month service fee. We've been able to get about 150 days of battery life out of these units, and that's with a 30-minute ping and 12-hour uploads. And that's in an area with a fair service location. Now, I know that you might want uploads more often than that. And if you have dogs that are easy to catch and you have the time to do that, you'll decrease your battery life a little bit, but you will be able to get a lot more often uploads. And so in an area that had good cell service, we were able to get 30 days of battery life with a 15-minute ping and about 2-hour uploads. So there is a difference between the units. We really seem to like the Oyster a lot. We do get a lot better battery life out of these in general than we did when we were using the original Yabbies. So the Optimus 2.0 or 3.0, we were using those units about 2 years ago, and then they came out with the 3.0 unit after we had already kind of changed companies, but they cost between $40 and $50. Their monthly service fee is a little high. It's about $20. The main issue we had with these, and still an issue with some producers that I've talked to that continue to use these, is you only get about 10 days of battery life out of the actual tracker. Now, you can attach an external battery, which is that blue unit that's in the picture over there on the side, and get some extended battery life out of that. The company claims with that external battery, you can get up to 30 days. Producers that I've talked to, they say it's, maybe about 20 days at the most. The tracker itself does have a rechargeable internal battery, and that external battery is also rechargeable, which makes that kind of nice. You don't have to buy batteries all the time. The Solar Max unit down there, it costs about $130 with a service fee of about $15 a month. The nice thing about it is it's solar powered. In the little trial that I gave the unit, actually on a dog's collar, I was able to get about 23 days of battery life out of it, and that was with a 30-minute ping and upload. The one nice thing on the Solar Max is, you're getting pings and uploads, and just like with the Optimus, on a set interval. So you're not waiting hours for it. You're getting it every so many minutes. When I place this tracker on a harness, I was able to get about 40 days of battery life out of it. I left the ping and upload time at 30 minutes because that seems to be a good time for us for most of our dogs. So pros and cons of cellular trackers. Well, you definitely have live tracking all the time. You can adjust the pings and updates on your own. There's a variety of sizes and features of units that are out there. The main problem is that if you don't have cell service or you're in poor cell service area, the tracker's not going to work. And it also eats up battery life when you're in a poor cell service area. Some of the cons, you do have a monthly fee. You're always replacing batteries every so many months if you have one of the non-solar units. And the battery life, it could be better than what it is. It really just kind of depends on the quality of your cell signal in an area. So a new system that we had installed over the summer out in Ozona is the Lora system. And so the Lora system was originally developed for the U.S. military, as was actually GPS positioning. And so basically how this system works is the trackers send a signal to a tower, something similar that's in this picture that I have over here on the side. And then the tower sends the signal to the cell company. So the nice thing about that is your unit cost is down. You can pick up a Yabby Edge Lora tracker for about $90 or an Oyster Lora tracker for about $100. They really don't look any different on the outside. It's the internal components of those trackers that look different. So if you purchase one and you think maybe they sent you the wrong one, they probably didn't, because like I said, the case is the exact same. Your monthly fee is also less with both of these trackers. The tracker on the Lora system is about $10 a month, so you save about $5 over the cellular ones. But you do have a $10 tower fee. The towers cost between $500 and $1,200, and that varies because, like the unit that you see in the picture there, we didn't have any power or internet service at that location, and so a tower like that is going to cost you around $1,200. If you have electricity available, it'll probably be around $700 or $800. And if you have internet and electricity, so if you can do something like by your house or at your headquarters, you can bring them down to around $500. Main issue with the Lora system is they have a 4-mile radius. So there's a 4-mile radius from that tower that the signal will send out. And so if your dog travels past that, or your ranch is bigger than that, then you'll have to have a second tower. So there's an updated version of the Lora tracking system there in the picture. Some of the pros of this system: much longer battery life. It looks like we're going to average about 6, maybe 7 months on the units that we have, and those are pinging and uploading every 15 minutes, which is one of the really big things that I like about this system. Your overall monthly costs are decreased, and only the tower is the thing that has to have cell service. So one of the nice things is, down on the ground, you may not have cell service well, but if you can put it up on your barn or you can put up a large pole, most of the time, you can get fairly good cell service at that point. And you can set these things to update as often as every 30 seconds. I'm not sure why a producer would want something that quick, but you can set them to be that fast. Some of the problems with the system, if your dog travels past that 4-mile radius, then the signal's gone. So you have to have a second tower if your operation is larger than 4 miles radius of your tower. The cost of the tower is an issue. It can be a big expense, but if you stretch it out over the life of the trackers, I think it'll probably pencil out. And then there's also a monthly fee for the tower. So you're kind of getting 2 fees on this system. But like I said, the nice thing is you definitely have constant pings and uploads with your tracker and long battery life. So satellite-based trackers. There's 2 different kinds that we've tried out. The main one that we use is the Smart 1C. It's a battery-powered unit. It takes 4 AAA lithium energizer batteries. Cost on those is about $120. Monthly fee is $15. The ones that we have are set at a 4-hour ping and upload. You do have to have that set by the factory, and they can set it as often as every 2 hours or as long as every 6 hours for you. We generally get between 3 to 4 months of battery life on it. I think it kind of just really depends on how fresh the batteries are, because since it's only pinging and uploading on a set schedule, you really shouldn't have a lot of battery usage used with that. The Smart One Solar costs around $250, so they're quite a bit more expensive than most trackers. The monthly service fee is also a little high at $35, but you can have a 5-minute ping and upload. Again, with this tracker, because they're both manufactured by the same company, if you need that changed, you do have to have the factory set that for you before you send it out. And the nice thing about a solar unit is, there's very long battery life, and you don't have to worry about changing out regular batteries all the time. So some pros and cons to these units. Basically, they work in any place that has low cell service, and all they really need is line of sight to the sky to work. With the battery ones, you can find them in any store, just about any place has Energizer batteries floating around. If you got one of the solar ones, that's a nice option. The big disadvantages of these is, one, they don't update as often as a lot of people would like. And the solar unit is fairly large. Again, if you were interested in the solar unit, I'd highly recommend that you place it on a harness on your dog. And so that's probably really only going to be applicable to people that have a smaller operation where they're going to be able to see the dog all the time to make sure it doesn't get hung up in any brush. So our tracking collars, I do get questions from you guys on a fairly regular basis about our tracking collar setup. And so what we use are canine comfort collars. And that's these orange collars here. They're about 1.5 inches wide. They're very durable. These come from Gun Dog Supply. And one of the nice things is, as with the regular nylon collars that we use, the dogs all have, they also put a brass tag on these, and they'll engrave them for free. But what I do is I attach the tracker to these collars with 3 zip ties. So I put 1 zip tie around the tracker itself and then the collar, and then I slide over this industrial heat shrink product, which is that black product that you see there on the side. We use the 3-inch diameter product, and it's a 2-to-1 shrink ratio. If you cut them about 6 7/8 of an inch long, you should be able to get about 7 pieces out of a 4-foot length of the heat shrink. 4 feet is as small as of a length that you can purchase this, or you can purchase like a 100-foot roll if you'd like. But the product works really well with us. You just use a heat gun to shrink it down. And then once I shrink it down, I put another zip tie on each end of it. And we have yet to lose a GPS tracker off of a collar. Sometimes the puppies will chew up the heat shrink quite a bit, but having the extra zip ties on there just makes it a little bit more secure. And so we've been pretty successful with that. If you do have multiple trackers or multiple dogs that you are tracking, I would recommend that you write the number of the tracker on the back of the collar, or maybe the dog's name on the back of the collar. That way you know which tracker goes, to what dog. It's really easy with us, when I'm tracking multiple dogs and livestock for the bonding project, to, go through and change out batteries, and then I don't know what tracker went with what animal. And so if you number them and name them, it's just kind of a nice little thing, and it's a little hint that I can pass on to you guys. So some of the latest technology that's out there, is this tracker that's in the picture there. It's called a GSAT solar unit. And yes, that is an ear tag based tracker. It's got a little solar panel on there. And the nice thing that I think about this unit, it does cost a little bit, but it's very small. It's really about 3 inches in length and about 1 inch wide. And you can purchase the unit for $200, and that cost covers 3 years of service with it. Again, this unit has to be set at the factory. So it comes standard with a 6-hour ping and upload, but you can adjust that down to 2 hours, which for young dogs may not be very beneficial. But if you have older dogs that you're just curious about where they're going, or you want to be able to find where your livestock are when you want to round them up for some reason, this tracker might be a real nice thing for you. It's satellite based, so you get coverage all over the world. Like I said, it's very small, about the size of your thumb, and there's no batteries to replace. So the company estimates that this unit should last about 10 years, which is about the average life of most guard dogs that stay on the property and don't roam and get hit by cars or caught in snares or something like that. So, do you need a tracker for your livestock guardian dog? Well, you don't have to have one, but if you're new to livestock guardian dogs, or you have new or young dogs, you might want to get some. If you have guard dogs that are roaming often, it's helpful to have a GPS tracker. A big thing that I get contacted about on a fairly regular basis is issues with neighbors and livestock guardian dogs. A lot of times a producer will call me, and their neighbor will be mad because, especially if they live kind of close to town, that their neighbor's claiming that their guardian dog came over and killed all their chickens or ran their sheep into a fence and they broke their neck. Well, if you have a GPS tracker on your dog, that can be very helpful. If you're pretty sure it wasn't your dog that did that, you can go on and pull up where your dog has traveled to, and you can show your neighbor that, hey, this wasn't my dog that crossed the fence line. Another reason, to have a tracker is, if you have a hard time locating your dogs because they're in large pastures, or locating your stock, the trackers make it really nice to have. If you just want to monitor the location of your dogs over time, are they staying with your herd? Or, what kind of a guarding pattern do they have? Are they, stuck with the herd? Are they traveling the perimeter all the time? Do they float in between? And so you can make some management decisions on, purchasing another dog based on the information you can get from your tracker. And then also, if you have a neighbor that traps or snares, if you've done some tether training with your guard dog, and they get caught in a trap or snare, and if you look on the tracking unit and you haven't seen your dog move in several hours, well, you might want to go over there and check and see if, they might have been caught in a trap or snare. And you can hopefully still save their life and not have to go through the process of retraining a new one. So you may not need a tracker if, you're really experienced in livestock guardian dogs and you've had a lot of dogs. If your dogs are older and they're well trained, they don't roam, those are good reasons not to have one. Good fencing. I know a lot of times that's difficult, but if you have a smaller operation and you have good fencing, you probably don't need a GPS tracker. If you have good relationships with your neighbors, probably don't need a tracker. And again, if your neighbors don't snare or trap or anything like that, is just kind of another reason why you may not need a tracker. So what's the benefits to using a tracker? Well, that depends on a bunch of different things. So best tracker to use, that kind of depends on your location. Do you have good cell service? If not, well, then you might want to look at a satellite tracker. How much do you want to spend on a tracker and a service? How often can you catch your dogs? If your dogs are well socialized and you can catch them more often, then some of the more inexpensive trackers, might be something that you want to use. The age of your dogs, are they young or old? Young dogs tend to, move about more and need a little bit more training. You got to keep an eye on them more. Are your dogs roaming a lot? If you don't have good quality fence, again, you might want to look at using one of the trackers. Type of livestock also. If you're trying to find your livestock, Dorpers in our experience seem to spread out, and they'll be bunched up, half a dozen here or 40 there, or kind of scattered all over the place, where some of your other wool breeds will stay more bunched up. So you may not need to go out and find all your stock. They'll be in one place all the time. And then like your pasture quality, is it open, flat, brushy, hilly? All those kind of things affect the type of tracker that you'd want to choose, whether it's cell-based or satellite or solar or battery. And then the last thing, is your management style. Are you a little bit more progressive and hands-on, or are you a little bit more laid back and hands-off? There's a lot of information that you can collect from your GPS trackers on your dogs. And so, for us, the two best units that we've found are the Oyster 2, which is just a cellular-based one, and then also the Oyster Lora. But there's always new technology coming out. And so even though those are the ones that work well for us right now, a year or two from now, we might have a whole different system. So you do kind of have to stay up on the latest technology, and don't get stuck in a rut, just using the same tracker all the time, and dealing with things that may not just be the best for your operation. So benefits of GPS trackers. The active units provide constant tracking for you. There's always new tech constantly coming out. So if there's your tracker you see seems like maybe it's a little bit too big, or you'd like to find something different or a different feature with it to improve battery life or a different case or whatever, there's tons of stuff coming out in this field. And there's more and more applications being used in agriculture in general, and especially with livestock. Battery life is always improving. When I first started, back in January of 2019, we were dealing in like days to maybe weeks of battery life. And now we're looking at months, to several months of battery life out of most trackers. And so, that all depends on the type of service option that you want, whether you want cellular or the Lora system or satellite based. Also, a lot of the units now come with waterproof cases, because they're being, especially these industrial trackers, they're being placed on shipping containers and semi-trucks. And so they just have to be sturdy and hold up much better than things did just a couple of years ago. The trackers make it a lot easier to locate your dog. And one of the side benefits is locating your stock. We didn't really notice that at first, but the guys that work on our ranches love having the GPS trackers and the app on their phone, because when they need to go out and round up stock for some reason, they just look and, hey, the dog's over here, and so the livestock are most likely going to be there. You can also locate holes in fences. So if your dogs are traveling about and your stock get out, well, you can just pull up on your computer and see where that happened, and then go to that location, and usually within a few yards there's going to be a hole right there. And so it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to travel a whole pasture to locate holes that happen in your fences from time to time. And you can also evaluate the movement of your livestock, because your dogs are going to be staying with your livestock. And so you can evaluate, are they using the whole pasture? Do they hang out in one area all the time? And so you can adjust your fencing or your water locations to try to get those stock to move to different locations. And also, as I mentioned, if you're a producer that's closer to town or near town, you can definitely provide proof of wherever your livestock guardians are on a regular basis for somebody if there's an issue that comes up with a neighbor. So GPS trackers sound like they're the greatest thing, but we do have problems with the units. And so one of the big things is false alerts. So this was an alert that I had gotten on a dog when we first tried out one of the satellite trackers. And so I got an alert one day, and I pulled it up, and man, the dog was all the way over on the east side of Africa. And so I knew that he hadn't hopped on a international flight and gone for a vacation. So things like that do happen. And, especially if you set up a geofence, I would recommend that you set that geofence, a fair distance beyond your fence line. Because a lot of times what will happen is the dogs will come up to the fence line and there might be trees there, and the livestock will bed down, and so then you're going to get a whole bunch of false alerts that the dog has gotten out when it really hasn't. So how accurate are these trackers? Well, when they're moving, they're probably within about 10 yards. Once the dogs stop, you'll see a lot of drift or GPS wander, and it'll spread out there to about 25 yards or so. So I would encourage you, when you set up your geo fences, to set them up, at least 30 yards past your fence line. And that way, if the dog, if you get an alert, that the dog has actually left at that point. Poor cellular connectivity. If you're having issues with that, try a multi-service SIM card. When we first got the Oyster units, we were having issues in different locations with them connecting all the time. And so we talked to the company about it, and they asked us different cell providers that were in the area. And so we went to a multi-service SIM card, and that made all the difference. And so that greatly increased our connectivity and our battery life on those units. So that's something to look into. Or if cellular signal is just poor or non-existent, try changing over to one of the Lora systems or a satellite tracker. If your unit is on but it's not tracking, that's an issue that we've seen with some units from time to time, especially the cellular units. If they're in a low service area, they may not update all the time. And so if your unit is on but you're wondering why you're not getting a location from the dog, or it's been in the same location for a couple days and for sure the dog is not there, it'll need a software update, and you'll have to bring that back in. Usually what you'll have to do is take the batteries out, put the batteries back in, and leave it in an area where it has good service and let it update for at least 24 hours. If you have short battery life problem, again, the companies recommend the lithium ion batteries, and I would do the same to you. There definitely is a difference in the amount of battery life with the lithium batteries versus the regular alkaline batteries. If you have a unit that stopped working for some reason altogether, and you make sure that your bill's been paid with the tracking company, most likely what's happened is that rubber seal has failed. And we have noticed over time, especially on the oysters, you really have to make sure that the seal on those is lined up with the holes that you attach the back plate to. If it's off at all, when you put the screws in, it'll tear the seal just a little bit. And over time, that seal just gets a little bit more and more torn, and then you'll develop a small leak. And it doesn't take much water inside to short these units out. If you have rapid battery decline versus your other trackers, so if you've got 3 or 4 trackers and you replace the batteries all at the same time, but one of them is using up battery life a lot faster than the rest, there's either one of the batteries itself is bad, or a cell in one of those batteries is bad. And so another thing that you'll see if you have a bad battery or a bad cell in a battery is some of your trackers will show you temperature, which generally isn't very helpful for having on guard dogs. But if the temperature is running hotter on your GPS tracker than your other trackers, that's another good sign that you have a bad battery or a bad cell in that unit. And there's really no way to tell which one is bad. We just replace all 3 or 4 of them and then go from there. So alert notifications, this is a big issue for us. And you can tell here that this was in just 1 month's time, alert notifications versus, the dogs actually leaving. So in the month of July, just with 6 dogs, I had over 600 alert notifications that came via text message and email. And when I actually went and, looked at where the dog's location was, out of those 637 notifications, only 44 of them were actually legitimate alerts. And so that's why I encourage you, when you set up your geofence, to make sure that you have a large enough perimeter set around your ranch. The one time when it does become an issue is if you have multiple geofences set up, which in most of our locations we do. you will get these false alerts like this. And I haven't figured a way around it unless, I want to go through and delete geofences and recreate them each time. And so, the trackers are not active for those geofences, but when they overlap, even though only one of them is active at the time, for some reason, we do still get these alert notifications. And you have to just be careful that, you kind of stop looking at them when you get one, because I'll tell you that one time when you don't actually check and make sure the animal is where it's supposed to be, will be the time that they've roamed over to the neighbors. And that definitely happened a couple times with some of these dogs. So some important points to remember with your GPS trackers. I highly recommend, that you look at getting a multi-service SIM card in them. Use the Energizer lithium batteries to help maximize your battery life in these units. They are a little bit more expensive, but it definitely pays for itself in the amount of battery life that you get out of them. Make sure that rubber gasket is seated properly each time. If you've got one of these new Oysters, the cases are designed a little bit differently. And so the company has actually dealt with that issue. And so now the rubber gasket is actually in the deep part of the case that holds the internal components and not on the cover portion. And so now it kind of just stays in place and it doesn't fall off. And I would recommend, if you can get some of the new cases, they do sell just the cases, that you get the new cases and get them updated if you have the old units out there. Upload frequency, not pings, uses most of your battery life. And so however often you're getting that data sent to you is what's going to affect your battery life on all these trackers. I would recommend, you ask about customer service and, do they have a help desk? Is that help desk available, 24 hours a day, or is it only available, 5 days a week? So, look into some of those things when you're looking for a company to use to purchase trackers from. Ask them if you can check out their software and their apps. Some of them are easier to use than others. And sometimes it's the small features that one company has versus somebody else that can make a lot of difference in how easy it is for you to do things with your trackers and your dogs. And then again, shop around for pricing. There's several companies that we work with. And the pricing on these units, it varies between all of them. Usually the unit cost is fairly similar. What really changes in your pricing will be your monthly fee that you pay for these trackers. So shop around and try to get the best deal that you can out there on these GPS trackers. So these are the companies that we deal with. Lone Star Tracking, Optimus Tracking, DPL Telematics. The Yabby and the Oyster units, whether they're the cell ones or the Lora systems, those are all manufactured by Digital Matters. And if you're interested in any of these trackers, I would recommend that you contact these companies and get some pricing and check out their software. And those are just some product links you guys will be able to view once this is posted, and you can get those off of our YouTube channel. So with that, I think I'll go and see if anybody has any questions. Are there monthly fees for service regardless of the number, or is it per unit? So the monthly fees are per unit. So depending on the tracker you have, it could be $5 or $15. So it is per unit. But you will get a price break. So the more units that you have, the cheaper your monthly service fee will be. Okay, so the next question is, does the GSAT solar go in the dog's ear like a livestock ear tag? I wouldn't recommend that you put it in your dog's ear. If you were looking at that tracker, what I would do is I would attach it to the collar. What you could do with that one is attach it in the middle of the collar, and then on the opposite side of the collar, put a weight of some sort, and that way it would keep it on the dog's back all the time, and to make sure that the solar panel is always getting a full charge. We haven't. So the next question is with no cell service, no internet, is the GSAT solar recommended? I haven't gotten my hands on that unit yet, so I'm not 100% sure how it's going to work out. If you didn't have any cell service and no internet service, right now I would recommend probably the Smart 1C to you. That's the one that we've been using. You end up with about 3 or 4 months of battery life out of it. It's a fairly small unit, and we've had pretty good success with it. So yeah, on the solar trackers, if you're going to use one of those, you definitely have to. Well, you can attach it to the dog's collar. Most of the time, the long hair doesn't affect it. But if you're only going to put it on a collar, you definitely would have to weight the collar, on the opposite side to keep it facing the sunlight all the time. I was only able to get about 23 days out of the solar unit that we had on the dog's collar. I didn't weight it because I was just trying to see, how long it would last. And the dog's hair didn't really affect it because it stayed past that all the time. But it did end up going down underneath the dog's neck, and so I think that was one of the reasons why it probably didn't last as long as it could have. So, are there any other questions out there? Well, if you guys do have any other questions, feel free to contact me here at the AgriLife Center or message me through Facebook. You can either call or email here. But thank you guys very much for watching today. And I hope you check back in with us in November on our next webinar.